This is Risk Reframed, the show where we bring you the leading risk experts from Moody's, our partners, and the wider ecosystem to discuss the risks organizations face, how they're interconnected, and ultimately what you, the risk professional, can do about them. Every conversation we have on Risk Reframed these days at some point comes onto AI, agents, and what comes next. Like most businesses in this space, Moody's has been busy working with customers on what to build and launch in terms of agents. And we're going to unpack some of that today and meet some of Moody's agents themselves. I'm going to do that with my colleagues, Olga and Keith Berry. Olga, I'm going to try to pronounce your full name because I'm notoriously bad at pronunciation. We have Olga Loiseau-Aslanidi.
Almost there.
Almost.
Olga Loiseau-Aslanidi.
But you're the Managing Director for AI Solutions here at Moody's in the Corporates and Governments unit. And Keith, you're our General Manager, so the one running the show, as it were, although I know you don't like to take credit for too much.
That's right. Yep.
Very good. First things first, we've got an office move going on, which happens sort of over the next week and a half. And you guys are trying to find each other in our current sort of partial floor earlier. Did you manage to find each other before the show?
We did. Yeah.
Very good. Did. I was sending you in opposite directions and I think. And Keith, the other thing I thought that was quite interesting was the last time you were on, we were talking about the launch of the sort of KYC franchise that you led at Moody's as that grew. And since then, the world's changed quite a lot technology-wise. We were trying to figure out whether it was before or after the initial OpenAI public, launch. Yep. What did we come to? What were our dates?
I think it was after it. So I guess November 2022 was ChatGPT, right?
Okay.
And the world changed. I think we spoke sometime early in 23.
Something like that. Yeah. When we release versus when we record is always, I never quite remember. But
exactly. So I think the world had started to change, but probably we weren't fully aware of it yet.
Yeah. We knew we could ask this funny website some questions and make it say funny things back.
Exactly. Get it to come up with poems and rhymes and stuff like that.
I do actually remember one of another former guest, Rupert, used to do, well, maybe he still does, but he'd feed a few facts about people and do like a birthday poem or whatever if there was a team meeting and the occasion called for it. So simpler times, some might say. I mentioned in the intro there, we're talking agents these days, and Olga, as I said, you're leading this for us. Everyone says they have them or are using them, but what are they if we want to sort of sort the wheat from the chaff?
Yeah. So we started with a chat, right? What you were saying, asking question and getting answer. What agent is really delegating work that you want to get done. So really giving it an objective, giving it a set of tools, giving it really a way how to do things, setting guardrails, and then get things done. So that's really what agent is. So it still uses the large language model like ChatGPT as brain, but then it can actually do stuff, not just tell us, okay, go and do this.
Okay. So if the LLM is the brain, you're saying there are other parts of the body, presumably, to do
tools would be hands, then there would be some connectors, and then agent would do work to achieve objective that we give it.
Okay, so these are the component parts that are the how it works, right? And
exactly.
And a lot of people say harness, and I don't know. Sometimes I understand it and I forget it, and I hear it again. How does the harness work?
Yeah. So why people started talking about harness is because when you just look at large language model alone, it's almost never enough for the thing that you want to do. So you want to bring the whole ecosystem, or if you want harness. So if you think about large language model as your CPU, harness is kind of operating system around it. So when you give an agent tools, when you give connection through, for example, what is called model context protocols, when you give it access to data, to your APIs, you do evaluations. So all these components of the ecosystem represent harness.
Okay, so it's a nice sort of collective term for all of it that's making it work.
Exactly. So it's really agent is a large language model plus harness to get things done properly that you can trust.
Understood. Bit of vocab there for everyone. So everyone make the notes. Keep that in mind as we go through today. Keith, you've been a technologist your whole career. I don't know if you like that term or not,
Yeah,
but you
definitely.
understand technology at a level that I certainly don't. Is this just the current thing, right? Like, 3 years-ish, 3.5 years-ish, and maybe a little bit more, but it's the Gartner hype cycle people talk about. Is this just the next one, or is it bigger than that in your view?
I mean, I think this is a fundamental kind of technology shift like we saw with the internet or with maybe cell phones and smartphones coming along. And there's been kind of multiple steps to this. But I think if you go to really November, December of 2025, so we're in midway through 2026 now, that's when we really started to see these agents, particularly in coding, getting incredibly powerful. So a lot of people talk about going home for Christmas or the holidays, December 2025, and starting to realize that these agents are writing code as good as a good engineer, right? And that's been a combination of the harnesses getting better, as Olga's talked about, but also the fundamental models getting better and their ability to do things. And then, then applying that to other domains, such as the work we do in KYC and that same approach. But this really does feel like the start of something fundamentally different in terms of the ability to automate things that historically might have taken people days, weeks, and hours and get them done those things done in a fraction of the time.
Okay, so we now have better tools, more mature models, and we're going faster. Everyone said the world was already moving too fast, but we're going faster. More gas is the solution. Olga, when you think about having this toolkit now, when you're building, because it's not about building a product, right? It's about building a solution for customer so they can buy it and benefit from it. How do you think about bringing agentic capabilities into the suite of solutions you're putting out there? What's your sort of mental model for how and when and why to use it?
Yeah. So it's really about building solutions, because it's not about applying the cool technology, which is also fun, but it's really solving real problems. So it's really either saving people time to do things or doing things more at scale. For example, producing various reports that would be, taking days or months sometimes to produce when you need to get data from different places. So it's really solving real problems for real use cases. So when we build agents, first thing we're asking, does this problem even need an agent? Perhaps it's an automated workflow. Or if it does need an agent, what exactly this agent is supposed to do? Then we're thinking about the harness around that agent. What harness do we need to build in order to solve that particular problem or a use case? And to give you an example, for example, in KYC, when we need to do screening for a company, we need to clear many different tasks that analysts would need to do. So, for example, check company names or owner name and see, are there any false positive matches? So really to clear this faster, and also to have human analysts focusing only on those important things where really you need to spend time and dig deeper, while agent can do the rest of them and say, this is likely match, or this is likely true positive. But then still, as a human analyst, we decide, do we want to accept what agent suggested, or we don't? So it's really solving problem like that, writing report or going through those, for example, screening tasks.
Okay, that's interesting, because I think a lot of us will have, as consumers even, right, like kind of experienced everything now having a chatbot, or seemingly, and sort of, it's the same service, but now I have this extra bit of friction to deal with because they want me to engage with something with AI. But you're saying it's not an add-on, it's you start at the fundamental question of what is the problem, and then does an agent actually need to be used here, or could it do a better job than our alternatives? Is that right?
Exactly. So it's really not about sprinkling AI on top of the solution, but it's really embedding it where it makes sense. Automate what needs to be automated, bring some judgment level when it needs to be escalated to human, and really having this ability to pass think about it as either you delegate your work to agents or you do it yourself and then engage agent only in the places where it makes sense. But in the end of the day, it's us human decide what can be delegated, where agent starts, where human jumps in, and where agent can actually take over. So it's really embedding it into the work that needs to get done.
Interesting. I know it's not just about KYC, but because we've done a lot of episodes around that topic, I remember we did KYC officer of the future several years ago, and we talked about this idea of like the risk architect. And your job won't be to work cases. Your job should be to set up your system and then design it around that. Or maybe it wasn't after ChatGPT was released, but before I understood any of it at all. So feels like that, but now we've actually got a toolkit to get there. Whereas I was just thinking, look, just get your right sources and get your right APIs and put them in the right order and you're good. Maybe that was naive, and now it's a little bit more possible.
Now it's definitely more possible because you could actually start the work simply by talking to what seems like a chatbot, but what's behind is actually the whole coordination of different workflows, agents grabbing the tools, the APIs, as you mentioned, and then bringing them in the right place at the right time. And importantly, bring also all the trusted data underneath, because this is what's obviously very important for trusted results of what the agent does.
We'll definitely come on to that. Keith, I was going to just ask you sort of your perspective from the leadership side and you and the leadership team. How have you sort of thought through when do we want to direct the builders in the org to go about pursuing agents versus where we specifically don't want them to? Like, is that a decision that you've thought about, or is it more letting them decide that for themselves?
So I think it's a bit of a balance, right? We've been talking internally about kind of type 1 organizations and type 2 organizations. Okay. And I think there's a set of organizations that are moving very fast in this space. And then there's organizations, and look, a lot of the work we do at Moody's is with regulated companies, and there may be different regulatory regimes around the world that are more cautious around the use of AI. Other areas are more positive and almost encouraging the use of AI. So you've got kind of different pressures on these different organizations. But we do have some very early adopters who want to move very fast and sort of have agents at the heart of everything they're doing. We're definitely seeing that at this point in time. And then we've got firms who feel less comfortable with that because of regulatory or their risk posture itself and are moving slower. And those are kind of the type 2 who are doing the more traditional approaches. But I think the two things come together. So very much what we're trying to do is embed, it's a bit of meet customers where they are, right? And people always say that, but in this context, it could be, well, if you don't want to leverage the AI, you can still use our products without, but we do believe there's benefit and having features and capabilities we can turn on that'll allow you to do that. And you'll see the benefit is key.
Understood. So it's not build these ones, don't build these ones. It's more understand customer base, customer demand, external forces, and then build appropriately for different points of that journey.
Yeah, the job to be done, I don't think is changing. The way you might achieve that job might be different. So, maybe to explain a bit of the story behind the screening agent, that came out of a customer who were a crypto firm who were moving very fast. And we really started with that pretty early, back in 2023, I think. Towards the end of 2023, with actually a discussion over dinner with their chief compliance officer, who was talking about the spikes they were seeing from actually all the sanctions that were coming out with the Russia-Ukraine war, and how that was really impacting their analysts, and their analysts were having to work all sorts of crazy shifts, and because they couldn't forecast the peaks and troughs in demand. And after a discussion with him at dinner, I asked him, well, when we give you an alert because of a new sanction, what do you do with it? And he actually shared his playbook for what his human analysts do. And I went back to our very early kind of machine learning AI team and said, could we automate this? And we kind of partnered with that organization to actually build a pretty early, to be honest, agent that took that playbook and automated it. I think the other interesting thing that brought to the table was, when we talk about what's different here is the description of the rules that you're giving the agent is often in natural language, right? So, for example, a common thing in the world of KYC and screening is to look at the distance, the geographical distance between the person who's maybe applying for an account and where you're seeing an alert from somebody in a risk database. And traditionally, the chief compliance officer would have written that in a policy document, would have handed the policy document to his engineers. His engineers would maybe have then worked with a vendor to implement that, potentially in code somewhere, or maybe as a configuration setting. In this world of kind of AI and agents, the chief compliance officer can go in there and change 50 miles to 75 miles and see how that impacts his portfolio of customers, right? And so I think that's one of the, back to your concept of risk architect, actually being able to architect your processes in natural language rather than having to go through these translation steps is very powerful.
Yeah. Well, again, staying with that theme or that concept, maybe we could all have been architects, or I could have if I didn't have to understand physics and maths and all those things. We just talk. I want a house that looks like this. Olga, I mean, we're talking about the screening agent. Is that the one you're most proud of, or do you have like a top 3 that you've worked on so far that you're like, these are my children, as it were, that I'm sending out into the world and doing work with customers?
Yeah, there are many agents that we're working on, and if I have to pick,
I'm making you, so no offense to anyone that's worked on the agent that doesn't get mentioned. They're all good, but
another good example is a due diligence agent. So this agent, think about this agent as a digital research colleague that basically puts together different parts of information that may be scattered in different places. So, for example, looking at company financials, looking at company ownership graph, looking at, for example, financial performance of a company, but also from more integrated risk point of view, looking at, let's say, sustainability profile of that company, or looking at cyber risk for that company. So really having that comprehensive analysis that, yes, potentially analysts could do it for a handful of companies in reasonable time. But when the number of companies increase and you think about thousands or even millions of companies that this due diligence report need to be put together, that is a very, very time-consuming task. So here, the idea behind due diligence agent is that it's your digital colleague that never sleeps, that pulls all this different information together and produce a comprehensive report that can be used, for example, for enhanced due diligence report, or in general for your integrated risk assessment of a company. Would you like to do business with that company? Maybe it's your potential supplier, or maybe you're onboarding that company. So really bringing this information together. So that's another example of what I like to call domain-specific agent. So screening agent, due diligence agent. Another, I think, very interesting example is what I like to call intelligent automation agents. So I like to refer to it as entity enrichment agents. So think about getting all the data for a company. Let's say when you want to verify if this company, who they say they are, you could connect to life registry data, see, if this company is really there, get some information from there, also get some curated data when, for example, something is not available in life registry, but also using entity enrichment agent, you can fill in remaining gaps. So you can also go to trusted and curated sources, websites, databases, and so on, and bring information that may be missing. So, for example, some contact information or some, names of people on the board or other information. So it's really doing it at scale that is very cool. Because if you think about doing it kind of one by one as an analyst doing search, that is extremely time consuming. So entity enrichment is really enhances that entity profile data. So that's another, I think, interesting example of agent that I'm quite proud of that we're working on.
That starts to solve some of the, we had a conversation last year with Ian Godfrey, one of our MDM experts, or master data management experts, for those that aren't familiar with the acronym. And that data interoperability challenge, like potentially that is a part of the solution then, right? Because you can go across these things that might not be fully joined up, or you might work across multiple vendors plus your own data and then join it up there. And then you have your own view, whether that's your golden record, as people like to say, or whether it's just something that goes into whatever pre-state before you make your golden record. Exactly. It would seem to have a lot of potential uses across all sorts of use cases once you get that bit right.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just to pick up on that, an example of that might be getting information from a company's own website, right? And where the AI and the agent can be very good is if you go to 100 different companies' websites, they look very different, but almost all companies will have an About Me page somewhere, and it can be buried many layers deep. It can be on the front page. On that page, it will have usually the management team, sometimes the directors, usually any legal disclosures they have to have about legal entities. So being able to, access that once you've understood who the company are and compare that and combine it with the registry data that we have, for example, is very powerful.
Yeah. And have a confidence in that as well. So really kind of assigning a confidence score, if you want, when you see this information in, for example, multiple sources, including company website. So this entity enrichment agent not only brings the data, but also brings more value by seeing how confident you would be enriching that data with that information.
That's a great point. I mean, I was about to ask, because I've been working myself on sort of some of the fraud use case, and one of the things I look for is like lots of fake websites now, because you can prompt a website into existence in a few seconds. So like presumably everything leaves a footprint. So there is markers of that. But if the agent knows to flag that if it happens, then you can protect yourself from the proliferation of too much information.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, and you've got to look at when did that website come into being, right? And for example, right? Because yes, it's very quick and easy now to create a new legal entity, register it, create the website. Is the website a real website? Is it selling something? Is it got a real phone number? Has it got real? There's a lot of tells once you start digging into it and thinking about. Now, the beauty with an agent is you can train the agent on those kind of tells, and then apply that approach at a larger scale than you
only bring the data back if it passes,
correct,
at least 5 of these 7 checks or whatever it is.
Exactly.
Makes a lot of sense. You mentioned the story of the crypto provider Keep. Like, what was the impact on that in the end once it went into deployment?
So that was really significant. I mean, they offshored their analyst team, and it's now 10% of the size that it was, right? And they're very much in that type 1, trying to automate every piece of their operation using AI at this point. But they've really gone a long way, and it's essentially a 90% reduction in the false positives they were seeing, but also in the team that they were needing to staff to keep up with that.
But it's interesting, the percentages, because I remember there's a guy called Aaron Stroud who was the like OG salesperson of what we now call Grid for Moody's. But you always talk about no matter what system you're using, you will have a 90% plus false positive rate, because it's the way the systems are designed. What you actually want to look at is the workload, because 90% of 100,000 hits is a lot more than 90% of 10,000 hits and whatever numbers you want to use. But if you're saying 90% reduction in workload on top of whatever, all the filtering and stuff we did before, then that is changing the TCO, or total cost of operations, came up earlier today. That's changing that hugely, right? That's
correct.
What people generally buy screening systems on.
Yeah, and those analysts that are there are looking at the complex cases, right? The ones that really need human judgment. And it's really a reduction in I guess, the false positives.
Yeah. And Olga, is there any other customer stories with these other agents? Obviously, due diligence would use screening, but screening is only one small part of it. The entity enrichment I just mentioned, there's loads of applications there. Is there any customer sort of stories that you're able to share around some of those other favorites?
I could maybe pick up. I was just at a banking conference and actually showing a number of people these solutions, right? And one of the compliance officers I showed the due diligence agents who his remark was, the way it works today in the world of KYC and compliance is you do enhanced due diligence on a small set of your portfolio, the high risk customers, partly because it takes, 3 to 5 days on average, partly because there's a cost involved in doing that deeper due diligence. And his remark to me was that with that, he would actually do due diligence on a lot more of the customers and he would do it more frequently than he can today. Yeah. So I think that's the sort of thing that you see coming out.
So because the total cost of operations comes down to do the thing, he can actually raise the bar in terms of risk detection and protect the firm better. So that one isn't the efficiency as such, it's efficiency pursuing better risk control.
Correct. Yeah.
Exactly. And because those reports can be produced on a regular basis, so customers can schedule, for example, production of these reports every certain interval that they would not be able to do before because it was just too much work. So now it's really, raising the bar, as you said, and also bringing even more information about those companies than it was possible before. And the entity enrichment part that I mentioned before, it's also part of those due diligence reports, for example. So if an agent, for example, is missing some data from a preliminary analysis, it can also go on those websites, trustworthy websites, and then bring that information as well. So you get 3 sources there. You get live registry that we have connection to, then curated data, and also enriched data that we built into the solution. So it's really a very nice combination.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, obviously, as I mentioned in the intro, like almost all companies seem, at least in our space, are working on something agentic or they're talking about AI, etc. Like, what's then the difference with the agents that we're talking about that Olga, you and the team have built and released versus other agents that might have a similar narrative out there? How does somebody sort of thinking through, screen agent sounds good or due diligence agent sound good to me? However, there's these 10 options, 5 options, whatever it is. What would you be saying to them would be different about the ones you're working on?
To me, the most interesting part is what Keith was mentioning before is we meet our customers where they are and where they work. So not all our customers are in the same place of their AI journey. So some of them, they prefer to use the regular kind of UI of the platform, familiar interfaces. Some others, they may be already thinking about using those workflows in large language models, for example, Claude or ChatGPT Enterprise or Copilot. And then they want to do their work from there. So the agents that we built enable customers to do so. So if they would like to do the screening, they use our model context protocol connectors and model context protocol applications to do the screening, to do the due diligence analysis where they actually work. So it's really, what I really like is the way how they could do the work from different places. And then it activates the agents that need to be activated. It surfaces the information that needs to be surfaced. So it's really frictionless exercise. So it's not agent per agent. It's really kind of building blocks.
Where does it go? What does it interact with, etc.
Exactly.
And I know we talk a lot about the data as well in terms of, obviously the cliche of garbage in, garbage out. I won't accuse others of having garbage, but what goes in matters. Keith, could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think at the heart of everything that's happening with AI is the need for really good quality data, or decision grade data, as we've started to call it at Moody's. And especially in these kind of mission critical use cases that we operate in, right? You know, if somebody makes a mistake in the world of KYC, then there's potential financial repercussions, reputational repercussions. So thinking about the trusted data that goes into that's really important. And I think that that's one of the things that makes us unique, is that we have this large data estate of millions of records, but millions of records on companies and individuals associated with companies and the facilities those companies work out of, and everything from that to cyber events and other sorts of risk events, extreme weather events, for example, and how we join all those up into a knowledge graph. Now, the power of that is you can access that information very quickly and easily because we've structured that data and joined it up. And that's really at the heart of what differentiates us and what we do. I think we often hear, well, could you just use an LLM, an AI, to go and find some of that data? And there are elements of that data where that is true. But I think as organizations are starting to understand, if you have an AI go and scrape the data from across the web, there's a cost to that. And if you're doing that every time you're looking up the name of a company, there's a cost to it. Then do you trust it? I mean, there's been a couple of stories in the last few weeks about people planting fake research, really for the purpose of demonstrating that you can't always believe what an AI is going to bring back. And so, having data that's trusted, having data that's joined up, and the joining up of those data sets is one of the unique challenges, and kind of the validation that we put into our data becomes very powerful. It also makes the AI that you're using a lot more efficient from a token perspective, as the cost of accessing tokens is becoming a really important topic.
So what you're starting to touch on there is this ecosystem, right? Talking through, obviously, customers wanting to get the best bang for their buck, again, to use a cliche. Data providers, Moody's being one of them, but there's the model providers. Olga, you've mentioned a number of them already. Then you have the agents, whoever they're built by. And then how does it all stitch together? Who's building your system or integrating your system? And you've got potentially, as you mentioned, regulators. So you cross that span. Does it come down to this token efficiency? And how do you run it as cost effectively or energy effectively as possible? Or like, how do you sort of see that ecosystem developing and sort of playing out together?
I think it's very much a work in progress for everybody right now, because, there's a lot of talk. I was listening to a podcast on the way here this morning about, a big tech company who already burnt through their whole year's budget on AI in the first quarter. And how are they managing that? And, there's different models coming out with different costs based on the model. And I think people still trying to understand, when do they need to use the most complex, advanced model versus when will a simpler model work. But at the end of the day, if you're tapping into this intelligence for the, trying to optimize the end-to-end cost of a process, right? Think about the end-to-end cost of onboarding a new customer into your business or a new supplier. Obviously, the token cost is a key part of that, right? There's it's potential. If you're not careful, you could end up with it costing more than it did before, because you've spent so many tokens. So how are you going to optimize the process, but the people involved in that process? Where do you need a human in the loop, and where do you need those decisions driven by humans, and what's that overall end-to-end cost? They're all key factors.
Yeah, I know. Couple of, one slightly funny thought, and then one that I'm not sure if is a story that was real or not, but one is like, I'd love to know on the pie chart of that budget that got blown through, how much of it was people like making funny images and sending them to each other on the internal chat, whatever tool they use. I'm just going to say it's fun, but maybe we need to put a lid on that. And then the other one was I saw some story, and I don't know if it was true, as I said, I didn't verify it, but it's saying there was some company they'd like hollowed out their engineering because they were like, oh, we're going to get, it coded by these agents or these tools. And then token cost. And they were like, actually, it's cheaper to hire junior devs and train them up a little bit and then get a balance. And so it's sort of like this.
I think I've seen that one, actually.
Yeah, no, it's like, is that kind of, The Onion, if anyone's familiar with that, where they do these sort of satirical stories? Or was it real? I don't know. But so if that is real, that's a bit pie on face for the team there. Do you know, Keith, have you come across that story? Or
I mean, there's multiple stories floating around at the moment about, certain large tech companies, having leaderboards of the amount of tokens people can consume, right? And that can cause the wrong behavior, right? Because I could write something that will consume millions of tokens, and that will cost a lot more than any of the engineer's salary if I want to. So it's
presumably I could just prompt it and say, please use the most tokens possible today.
Correct.
And leave it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you just...
Yep.
And that's why harnesses exist, because they are designed to use tokens in the most effective and efficient way, right?
Okay.
So building those solutions using right harnesses and then providing them is indeed a way to actually save tokens. But otherwise, you can burn so many tokens just by trying things that maybe is not, the optimal way to do what you want to do.
And then that's back to Keith's point. If the data is already connected, if it can take the fastest path to the answer, get the efficiency.
Exactly.
Yes. Staying on data, AI-ready data is a phrase that's now started to bubble up. Maybe I should have been more aware of it, but just the last few months, it seems to be more and more. Like, what does that mean specifically? Is it just what we've talked about? Is it just knowledge graph and joined up data, or does it mean something else where data is ready to be used by agents? And just how does that play out? I mean, I don't know who wants to take it first, but
maybe I can start. So when we say AI ready data, usually what it means is when you would normally use your API, it would be used by a human deciding, which endpoints to use, what information you need and so on. However, when we build AI solutions, it may be used by both human and also AI agents that, someone built. So we need to be ready for this type of situation too. So instead of building only APIs, we would also look at building what we call smart APIs, which is basically a way how to enable agents to consume and understand the API and have that kind of translation layer, explaining it basically how it should be used, what endpoints to take, what does that mean. And on top of that, what I mentioned earlier, a model context protocol, which is basically, in a very simple term, it's a USB-C connector. It's how you connect one AI to another AI. So think about it as a buying washing machine, and then you have an instruction how to use it. So that model context protocol, it basically gives an AI a protocol how to use the data. So it actually, when you go and, for example, open your chat and say, I would like to screen this and that company, or I would like to build early warning system, it would already know what to take from that Gen AI ready data. It would already know how to use that data without us, feeding in lots of documentation and reading through, ways what this data is, reading through data dictionaries and so on. So it's really a combination of smart APIs and model context protocols and MCPs.
Yeah, so maybe from the engineer's perspective, it's about that self-describing nature of what the API can do and then how the AI agent can use it to do things. So an example, when the MCP protocol came out, which must be a year ago now, roughly?
Yeah, I think
we
during the fall.
created some MCP wrappers around our APIs. And traditionally, an engineer would code to that API and would always use it in the same way. And we have a thing called the EVA MCP, can go direct to corporate registries and look up a company, find its information, or an EVA API. And if you were a programmer writing that into a script, you would use it in one specific way. we put an Eva MCP together, which describes to the agent how to use that API, and it worked, right? So you could ask the agent to find information on Moody's UK Limited, and it would bring back information on Moody's UK Limited. But what was really powerful and what's different is you then, I remember doing this, and this was one of those light bulb moments with AI where it does something you're not expecting. I think I said, tell me all the companies based in 1 Canada Square, London, which is where we're sat today. And it literally used an endpoint I wasn't as aware of because it was documented in the MCP, and searched all the companies that were based in 1 Canada Square and gave me a list back. And so that documentation built into the Smart API or MCP allowed it to understand that it had those capabilities. And go and do that for me.
So when we say AI ready data, the database itself or the service in the case of Eva is the same.
Yep.
It's literally the documentation and the connectivity, I guess, or how you connect with it that is changed.
Correct.
Yeah, that's right. It basically comes with instructions. It explains to AI agent how to use that data. And then, the possibilities are endless. You can search for companies, as Keith described. You can, generate reports. You can ask to build the whole application or generate dashboards. And it would already know what endpoints to pick, what to do, and without you being as much involved.
I'm going to say they should stop calling it AI ready data and call it AI ready manuals or AI ready wrappers, which I think rolls off the tongue better. Stop confusing me. There was a couple of audience questions I just wanted to put to you guys, and then we'll start to wrap up. One was somebody sort of had been learning about agent skills, they said, and they were like, their understanding is like agent skill is a set of repeatable steps that an agent can follow. And so like, well, repeatable steps, that's kind of what we've been doing for years, and they have been in their roles and previous roles, right? Orchestration, do this API, then do this one, take this data field, do this one, etc. Get to an output. He's like, and what he's hearing is that it's like very energy expensive to run these agents for, and you don't always need to. So like, why wouldn't you use an agent skill versus just have an agent go and run some orchestration flow that doesn't need the AI-ness, for lack of a better term, or me and him both missing the point?
I think both approaches are possible, right? So if you think about some of our solutions, we are wrapping the solution with the ability for an AI to call it, and the solution has a pre-built workflow, right? We have products in the market that follow an onboarding workflow, and that's possible. But it's really back to that what I explained to you about that chief compliance officer at that crypto firm, right? A skill is really written in the domain language of a business user. Right. So imagine the compliance officer just writes the skill for how he wants his onboarding process to be done in English, right? Without
or any other language,
or French or German or any other language, correct? In natural language, sorry. And rather than having to pass that off to a developer or to an implementation consultant, that becomes the playbook, and so that ability for the business person to evolve the solution with skills is very powerful.
So the value isn't the fact that it's agentic or AI driven; it's that it's faster time to value, it's less middlemen or women in the way, basically, to get the thing done. It's just, I want to do this, I do this thing, the tool does it,
and the agent can. That can be an iterative process. There's some really interesting stuff in some of the latest skills about running evals and having processes that self-tune those skills to make them better over time. So there is learning that can go back into the skill. There's ability to branch, but I think the core thing is really capturing the business knowledge in natural language.
Interesting. And the other question we got was, somebody sort of observing that, so there's the AI race, right, or the model race between the various providers who are building that. But then there's also a race for proprietary data. And, we probably consider ourselves in that race as a data business primarily. But the question the person asked was like, will AI and agentic workflows, will that make it easier for new data providers to emerge? if somebody wants to build a proprietary data set, can they just do that much faster, much cheaper now because the toolkit is fundamentally different to the one that the big data companies started with, whether it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, etc.
I mean, I think there's elements of, you could argue that there's elements of that's true, but it's really the depth of the data and the complexity in joining it up. And we've tried to do some of this internally at Moody's, right? And, we obviously have a huge database on companies, and you can give an AI a company name and it will bring back to you something quite plausible about that company. However, number one, do you trust that, right? Where did it find that information from? And as we talked about earlier, there are examples now of people creating information that's obviously false and proving that can come through an AI. So number one, there's the kind of provenance of that data. But number two, what we've actually demonstrated to ourselves is the complex data. So you might find information on that company, but will you find information on the other 124 legal entities in that corporate group?
Okay.
You probably won't, just from a simple question to a Claude or a ChatGPT and we've kind of red teamed some of this and tried to create data in that way and really found that it's not practical. So it's back to that decision grade data and trusted data. How, can you speed up some pieces of it? Potentially. And that's, but we're doing the same thing, right? That's where our entity enrichment agent comes in to layer in data that is more widely available.
Exactly. And to that previous question that you had from audience on skills. So basically building some of those skills and then using that to enrich the data and then building an agent around it. Because in the end of the day, skill just sits on top of that harness and being application. So yes, in theory, it can be, faster and, it's more possible than before. However, just the pure scale of it and, all the interconnections make it very, very complex task to do.
Good. Well, we will wrap up there, but one last question. Olga, I'll start with you. If somebody wants to learn more, anywhere you'd send them? Anything either you've written or you've read that you think is worth others checking out?
I think in general, just staying kind of up to date with all the amazing AI race, seeing, what's new in AI world. So I follow, various researchers on Twitter, on Substack. So, for example, I read a lot of Andrei Karpathy's blogs. He always has something interesting to say. So really kind of staying up to date and understand what you could be using in your work, and also being kind of open-minded of trying things, because our own workflows change. So when we were building agents, we were also using lots of agents to build those agents, because really now when I do certain task, first thing I do is, can I use AI to help me do that? So staying up to date with, what are the latest developments, what are skills, what are harnesses, what can I do today that I couldn't do yesterday? I think it's a very important skill to have for everyone. So that would be my
very good. We'll get the link to the author or blogger that you mentioned, and we'll put that in the show notes. Keith, anything you'd suggest people check out?
Yeah, I mean, Olga's been very modest. She's published a number of things that are on the Moody's.com site that we can link to around how we're using agents and AI in our products. I mean, I think follow any of us on LinkedIn because we often talk about what we're doing, and I would agree. I think there's kind of a LinkedIn community around AI and agents. There's definitely a community on X of people who are posting pretty frequently, and YouTube actually is the other interesting venue, because it's literally changing every week.
Yeah, world's biggest education platform.
Correct.
I think. Anyway, guys, we'll link to all of those things and show notes. Thank you very much for coming on and updating me, updating the audience. And yeah, look forward to having you back another time.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Alex.